And on stage here today, I have with me Tristan Attenborough, right over there. He's the global head of energy, power, renewables, and metals and mining at JP Morgan. I have Katie Black, just taking the seat over there. She's the energy transition director at the Transdev group. We have Andrew Brem, taking a seat over there, UK general manager of Uber. We have Brian Pierce, global head of sustainability, sustainable transport at HSBC, and Maria Uvarova. She's senior vice president and software product management at Stellantis. Thank you very much for joining me here today. And we have an interesting but very huge topic to cover tonight, future mobility trends. And I would like to start with the perspective that I feel is getting more and more important these days, the perspective of the customer needs and customer expectations. And I feel that along the whole transport chain, companies are kind of focusing more and more on what the user actually wants and kind of try to incorporate that in the development of their products. I think this is a really good shift in focusing on whom we are doing this for in the end. And I would like to do a round and ask you what major trends do you see that actually kind of benefit the transport for customers in the end? What are expectations that are now being fulfilled with the new trends of mobility and transport? And Katie, maybe you want to give it a start.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I think Transdev, we're a very large public transport operator across many modes, mainly buses. And I think the one that I was going to pick out for today was, obviously public transport was massively impacted by COVID, and we're now seeing ridership levels, approach, varies across markets, but come back to where they were. But, people's travel patterns have changed. And what we see is that people are less and less willing to invest in travel passes. Mm-hmm. So they're less likely to just go and buy that weekly ticket, which, is a challenge, but also an opportunity because it opens up many different ways that we can, offer people packages to pay for how they want to get around, with new systems and, new ways of creating pay-as-you-go. There's all sorts of interesting tariffs that we can open up that better suit people's needs. So I would say that's a trend that, creates an opportunity for us to respond to in terms of meeting customer expectations. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've seen recently that the Uber app is kind of picking up on that trend, also kind of becoming a or taking up the multimodal perspective now. Maybe you could elaborate a bit on that point.
Yeah, sure. From an Uber perspective, we see customers being, as ever, they want the best and they want to pay the least. And so, and that's perfectly understandable. So they definitely exhibit a preference for traveling in electric vehicles. I mean, they are just nicer. They're more modern. They are quiet. They don't smell. Or in the case of a Lime bike, they require less personal effort, which is always very nice. But they're not willing to pay more money for that. And so the decision that we took is to say, look, if you select Uber Green, which is the pure electric vehicle, you will pay exactly the same price as the traditional Uber X, but you'll get a green vehicle. But the driver will receive 10% higher earnings for that same trip. And moreover, I think people do want to feel a sense of some kind of legitimacy of their decision. And so we also tell people how much CO2 they've saved. And I just on the way here, as I took my DLR to get here, I noticed that I've saved 146 kilograms of CO2 since 2021. So I'm feeling somewhat better about myself, only slightly, but nonetheless somewhat better. But that's what customers are saying. They want to do the right thing. They want to have a great experience, but they don't want to pay any more for it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Maria, if you look at that point from the automotive perspective, how do you see these shifts from the automotive industry?
Yeah, that's definitely a very good question. And one thing that we see for sure is that the customers become more and more demanding and also technology savvy. So what we observe today is that when it comes to selection of your next car, customers pay a lot of attention to what type of infotainment they would have, whether the car is connected, whether the car can provide personalized experience. And of course, we want to make sure that we actually answer to those customer needs. And for me specifically, working in automotive software, it is critical to not just understand the demands of the customers today, but actually to outperform them. And here, I believe, is really the agile approach that we have in software development for years is really what helps us a lot, because we want to make sure we don't just, go back to the lab for 5 years, and then 5 years later we emerge with something amazing, and the market has moved on. But we actually stay very close to the customers, really in real time getting their feedback, understanding in real time, again, thanks to connectivity we have in the cars today, understanding how they use our products on the roads, what they like, what they dislike about it. We use Net Promoter Score to constantly actually survey our customers and better understand how they evaluate our products. And through that, we can build better and better products for them. So for sure, the fact that we now have connectivity and we now have a lot more technology-savvy customers, it creates a completely unique environment to actually support more and more really kind of attuned to customer software development for the automotive industry.
Are there some new opportunities for pricing in that? I could imagine maybe, Tristan, that is something that you could elaborate a bit on. I would imagine that payment along a transport chain could be a real next big thing, I would say, if it gets smooth and integrated, as we heard before, that you don't want to have like an extra ticket, extra payment for each and every kind of part of your journey.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe just to put some context around that, so from an energy perspective, we're within my group thinking about those that provide infrastructure for hydrocarbons or electrons or even calories for people on the go. Think of that, obviously gas stations, convenience stores, the power companies and so on, all of whom have a role to play. And I think when we think about that from a payment perspective, the first thing that is happening is a sense that I need to move away from an asset-centric approach. What have I got today? I've got a gas station. What have I got there? How do I make that a more relevant digital kind of mobility-driven experience? And if you start there, you end up trying to say, well, how can I further monetize that thing I've already got? And therefore, you have an asset-centric mentality. Really where the thinking has shifted to is a customer-centered mentality. So in the journey, in the route, in the pathway, in the experience, what I have as an asset forms part of it, but not all of it. And I think the realization there is that in order to create that additional value, that monetization, that commercialization, you need to think about what you need to add on to your asset in a relevant way to think about the new revenue stream and the new opportunity. And that, of course, needs to come without complexity. No complex pricing infrastructure, don't make it difficult to understand, and really try to make that easy as well. So we're definitely seeing a shift towards customer centricity, and within that, making the way people can pay really easy and simple. And we all need to recognize that each country around the world, payment methods and payment approaches are very different. So you've also got to be flexible and agile with what you offer.
We've already heard from you that now you feel a lot better that you saved some emissions. And I would imagine that a lot of people feel like that. And I could also imagine this being a real turning point for the introduction of EVs, say more on the general public, that feeling good about it is nice, but in the end, it kind of needs to be at least on the same, say, monetary level that like regular cars would have created. Maybe you could elaborate a bit on that, because I feel that we're kind of getting closer, big mobility trends, towards the price levels of, say, different car options kind of getting closer together and maybe kind of getting close to a turning point there?
Yeah, I think so. So we've been in a stage, I think, up to now where it's been kind of early adopters. I'm an early adopter myself, so I've got 2 EVs. I'm quite familiar with the technology. I'm probably a little bit geeky myself as well, enjoying the charging experience. But I appreciate across kind of my friends, et cetera, and the wider public, that's probably not the case, right? And so for them, it's about having a mobility solution which works. So we're going from this kind of early adopters to mass adoption. And I think it's fair to say we've had some fairly tough headwinds at the moment. So we've had high cost of living and interest rates. So if you're trying to finance a more expensive vehicle, that's obviously a problem. I think it's probably fair to say that most of the OEMs have been focusing on premium vehicles, and some of those premium vehicles are really nice, but there's only so many £60,000 SUVs you can sell. And I think finally, there's been quite a lot of news in the media, some of it quite against EVs. I'd say some of it is fair challenge. You know, if you're at a broken charger at midnight and it's not working, that's a really frustrating experience. I found some of the other news stories more frustrating. You know, the one about EV5s in particular, where the data clearly shows that EVs are safer. So tough times at the minute for this year or so, and some tough targets, but I think there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And that comes exactly what you were saying about pricing. So if you haven't read it, there's an IEA EV report. It's quite good. It's quite a lot of reading. But they do some analysis on total cost of ownership. So if you're looking at total cost of ownership, that's the depreciation of the vehicle. It's the fuel, insurance, all those costs. And so in Europe at the minute, we're kind of hovering around parity. But if you want to convince a consumer to change, you probably need some clear water. So it's not trying to do the maths in your head. You just know the EV is cheaper. And I think the good news is that's going to happen. So we're going to see battery costs fall. Most of the consultants say by 2030, you know, we'll see costs 20% down. We're seeing a shift in battery chemistry to lithium ion. I think this year lithium ion has overtaken NMC overall. And we're seeing a whole load of new models. So I think there's a new Stellantis electric Jeep coming out. Dacia is launching one. We've obviously got a lot of Chinese imports coming in. Once those new cheaper vehicles come in and it's kind of a clear economic decision for consumers, I think we will see sales lift back up and it will keep going.
Mm-hmm.
If that's okay, just quickly adding on top of what you said. First of all, I fully agree. We need to make sure this is a no-brainer for the customer, right? Right now, this is still a bit of an adoption curve, and it is actually difficult for you as a first-time BEV customer to get over this hump, right? But from an OEM perspective, especially one is Stellantis, as we are 100% committed to our mission to actually make the more sustainable mobility affordable for all. We are, one, launching cheaper models that are actually much more affordable, that are on parity with what we see, for instance, today from the Chinese car manufacturers, like 20,000 euro or even less. This is one thing that we are doing, and I believe this is really what will help our customers towards more adoption. Second, as you mentioned, charging, especially charging on the go, is still for sure a pain point. And this is also, I believe, where our customers just have a very high expectations. Well, maybe not high, but a realistic expectations, right? That it should just work, right? You come to a charging point and it should just work because, hell, why not? What we could do is to make sure that at least with the help of technology, if the infrastructure is still not there, but with the help of technology, we can abstract this complexity from the customer, because we do already have the information about the state of the charging point. We have the information about the state of the battery in the car, and we do have an opportunity, as we do today at Stellantis, to actually combine these two data points and provide you with the best EV charging navigation route that will actually lead you to the charging point when you need it and to the charging point that works, yeah? Hallelujah. So, I mean, those solutions, they are not something that is obvious because, of course, you need to make an effort. As an OEM, we make an effort, and I'm sure a lot more of us will actually join that. But it's not just something that happens by itself. You can't just throw a battery electric vehicle at the customer and expect them to deal with the infrastructure challenges themselves or the pricing challenges themselves. This will not happen.
Maybe, Katie, you could tell us a bit about how the EV topic is for you as, say, a public transport provider, how you, there's a mic come in, how you deal with that in such a large group and also spread globally. I think probably, or I could imagine that the challenges are quite different if you look at different areas of the world.
They are different. I mean, they're certainly different to the challenges we face for cars. But I mean, I think the prize is so big for electrifying public transport. You're getting a double decarbonisation benefit, right? You're getting a decarbonisation benefit just by getting people on the bus in the first place and out of private transport. And then also, if you can electrify it, I mean, that's just, you're also reducing congestion, having a great impact on air quality. So it's a real, it might be a small proportion in terms of numbers on vehicles in the road, but it's, it's just a fantastic solution to get. So the challenge for us is therefore to work with our clients to get more people onto those buses or whatever form of public transport it might be, and to be actively choosing that, and to that we just need to provide them with a great service. I think in terms of electrifying bus fleets, I mean, it's happening, we're doing it. We've got 3,000 zero-emission buses on the road in 13 different countries now. So, we're making them work in a whole range of environments. The challenge for us is really how can we really start to deploy them at scale? Mm-hmm. How can we get the necessary investment? How can we work with our public transport authorities, our clients, to really identify the right solutions for their local conditions? How can we make electric vehicles work in all types of climates? We've got some buses in Sweden, it gets to -20 overnight. That's that's a whole new set of challenges, but we're making it work. We're looking at deploying them in the Middle East. There you're using a lot of energy just to keep the bus at an acceptable temperature, which is the same for diesel buses, but we're expanding those use cases into all different places around the world, and that's what makes it so interesting, but also fascinating. But I think, it's here, we're doing it, we're making it work. It's just how can we spread it everywhere, and how can we really, really optimize it so that it's working fantastically everywhere.
Mm-hmm. One point that you highlighted are investments. I think maybe that also is a big overarching topic that probably tackles all of your areas, because in the end nothing will work without the money, and the transition will always cost money to kind of build the infrastructure, to get new technology on board, to develop new things, always would need investment. So I just like to kind of throw this topic of investment at you as a panel as a whole, and kind of would ask you, whoever would want to comment on that, just to pick the mic.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, Mara. It's very worth pointing out that transition in general and decarbonisation is in and of itself very carbon intensive and very expensive. And I think critical to this, which I hope Katie would agree with, is the government has a big role to play. It requires a lot of investment, particularly if you want to do it quickly. Mm-hmm. And I think how you incentivize behavior change, how you make sure that you can not just decarbonize end use electric vehicles, but also decarbonize the way you generate power and then importantly transmit it, is also very important. So you need to look at the whole system, and the business case in any one part of the system is hard enough. The business case in the whole system is very hard, and I think governments have a massively important role to play in creating certainty and transparency in each part. So I think we really need, as a collective here, to keep pushing that in the right direction.
I mean, on the point of investing, we see it very much, sustainability is a team sport. So you absolutely need policy to come behind it. And actually, London is a really good example of that. So the exemption for electric vehicles from the congestion charge is an enormous policy support. But equally, private enterprise can come alongside that. So while the government is offering that sort of support, we are putting our hands in our pockets and significantly supporting drivers of Ubers to switch from an internal combustion to an electric vehicle. But the amounts are big. So at the moment, any driver who hasn't yet switched is being offered £5,000 as an incentive to switch. I mean, this is large amounts of money. And our partners, Kia, for example, are offering between £12,000 and £17,000 off the price of an electric vehicle. And we're also offering with BP, our charging partners, 3 months of free charging. And I'm only saying that because if that sounds enormous, it is enormous. And that is indeed what you have to do to support drivers on this transition. I think we can also help massively on charging. We've spoken quite a lot about charging, but there's a hugely fantastic use of data to figure out where to optimize the location of chargers. And London's a funny one there because so happens that the density of chargers in London is beautifully correlated with wealth and income, basically. So if you live in Kensington and Chelsea and Westminster, early adopters of Teslas, fantastic, there are chargers everywhere. But we've actually had to pay for 700 chargers to go into Newham, Redbridge and Brent, which is where drivers who drive the most and who can therefore contribute most to decarbonisation live. So, look, from the financing point of view, it's got to be both private and public together. You need strong policy for sure.
Maybe.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Maybe just one more addition in terms of investment. When it comes to OEMs, what we currently invest, I believe collectively a lot into, is the overall transformation of the industry. Because for OEMs, it's really a question of surviving. And we are moving more and more towards software-defined vehicles. We are moving more towards faster production cycles. And that is actually a massive change, right? So we are, as Stellantis, we are investing a lot, for instance, into reskilling of our workforce. And this is a huge opportunity for us. This is a huge topic. We definitely need to make sure that we have more software engineers as part of our workforce. We are reskilling, therefore, and of course, we are also hiring. So this is a big investment. That's one. Second, we are investing a lot into the cultural transformation, because to be able to actually, let's say, walk the talk and move much faster with the changing customer demands, we also need to make sure that as a company, we change in terms of the way we approach the work, in terms of the way we actually collaborate to build better products much faster. This is a culture change, right? It's not just happening overnight, and this is also a huge investment for us. And of course, building next generation technology, new software, new hardware technology, we know that this is accelerating a lot today, and this is where we invest too. So for sure, when we, as OEM, when we talk about investment, right now, this is where we really focus today, and this is where we also need support to at least when we talk about, let's say, regulatory environment, so that at least that stays relatively stable for at least some time, so that we can focus on those important investments and make sure that we don't have to jump through every time new and unpredictable regulatory hoops that unfortunately still happen a lot for OEMs.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, it's great to hear about kind of electrification of road transport. So that's 75% of emissions, and I think we can electrify that. We're hearing great things. I don't think we should forget the hard-to-abate sectors, so obviously marine and aviation. And aviation is probably, in terms of investment, what we really need to think about. Big challenge of aviation is the growth in demand, right? So 80% of people haven't been on a plane. We're seeing projections where India grows 6-fold, China grows 3-fold. And even here, and in the developed world, people still want to take more flights. So I think aviation is a really big challenge. And you've got this demand element, but then obviously you've got the weight of planes, the safety, the fuel specification. It's a very challenging area to decarbonize. So we've kind of got 3 levers to decarbonize. Lots of opportunities for efficiency in operations, sorting out air traffic control, lightweighting planes, electric taxiing, etc. But I think, given the demand we've got, that will probably only keep us where we are. So that leaves 2 things left. New design of aircraft with different types of fuels. That's going to require a lot of investment and probably quite long timelines to deliver, given all the safety things. So the final piece of the jigsaw is sustainable aviation fuel. So that's certainly something we've been looking at as a bank. And that really comes, as you were saying, about bringing partners together, airlines, energy companies, financiers, government, and we really need to scale that up quickly now. There's a lot of small plants around with kind of new technologies, but bringing that to scale is absolutely critical to decarbonize aviation.
Mm-hmm. One underlying topic, I feel that we've talked about a lot, or with almost any trend that we've discussed now, it's always about data, it's about digitization, it's about software, how to kind of make sense of the data, how to get the software, bring more benefit to the customer, how to make payment work more smoothly, and everything kind of has to do with digitization. Maybe one quick looking at the time beyond digitization, like purely technical development, like old-time engineering. Is there anything that you see, like big thing that needs to be done in the near future that could be a game changer beyond the digital sphere?
Well, happy to jump in. It's obviously autonomy, right? Autonomous driving is a huge trend. I don't know if that's something that will be under the umbrella of digitalization as well, probably not, but it's for sure something that is coming, has come already, and I would say that the overall customer experience and also customer opinions are still shaping up, right? So we are dealing with a very fluent and dynamic situation here, because on the one hand, the demand for autonomy is there. On the other hand, we also have a lot of fear and lack of trust to the technology. So even though we know that autonomous vehicles are actually safer, statistically speaking, but we don't have enough data, not enough years of observation, perhaps, to really convince the public that they're safer. At the same time, the trend is definitely there, so it is happening, and the question is, how do we make sure that we leverage this technology as soon as possible to actually create safer environment for everybody?
If I can just chip in there, I think there's two hidden things underneath that, kind of the data and the ability to get commercial outcomes from it. And one is technology and its cost, and the other is regulation. And I think an essential leap forward is to say, for most commercial enterprises that make stuff or provide services, being regulated and having a tech stack are things that they need to think about. And one of the things as a payments provider and a financial services provider, a licensed one across all the markets, is that stuff we do for a living. So I think there's a chance to get some of that fixed cost out of the way, create a partnership then that then allows some of the data to flow, and how somebody pays, what they paid for, where they paid for, how they pay for it, and the cost of the payment is all a piece of that infrastructure. So there's an opportunity to unpick some of that difficult stuff. All right.
Unfortunately, we're already coming to an end, and I would so much love to deep dive into each of these topics with you here. But just to have a seriously quick last round with maximum one sentence. Mobility reimagined, I think, is a good topic that we've come here together now. And from your perspective, mobility reimagined, what is the one trend for you that people would change their mobility behavior around, and like not in 2050, but more like in this decade? So something that will happen now or the next few years. Maybe take it the other direction this time.
Yeah, I joined three things together. Shared, it's obscene that the average car is only used 5% of the time. It makes no sense. It's got to be shared.
That's already one sentence, so quick.
Electric and multimodal.
Thank you.
Right, one sentence. Electric flying cars. How about that?
That sounds really exciting. I think I'm going to go with autonomy as well. My neighbor just came back with a video clip of him visiting Phoenix with no driver at the steering wheel, which blew my mind. Just one question, we need to think about how that interlinks with sustainability and we avoid just having lots of robo-taxis all driving around blocking up the place.
I'm going to say open architecture, connecting existing networks with seamless payments.
And I'm going to check in a completely different thing at the end, which we haven't mentioned so far, but is actually, we kind of call it an invisible trend, which is demographic change. So the impact of the aging population on how we move around, I think, is going to be a big trend in the next few years.
Thank you so much for this. This was the last thing now between you and the Move Groove, which is about to start. So give a very big round of applause for this wonderful panel and enjoy the drinks and the party. Thank you for listening.